From bureaucracy's basement to your ears, this is the weekly meeting of the Queen City Improvement Bureau. Each week, the dedicated staff of the Bureau meet to file recommendations, make reports, and generally survive on water that drips from the boiler pipes into their open mouths as they sleep on beds of dot matrix printer paper. Maybe one day we'll escape from the hell that is this sub-basement, but until that day comes, this city is not going to improve itself. So here we stay, improving things. And this meeting is now in session.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Sounds spooky. You sounded spooky.
It's my new vibe. It's
Really?
a spooky vibe.
Is it Halloween all year?
It is Halloween all year.
Every day is Halloween?
Yeah.
The fabled day predicted by Ministry finally come around?
Yep.
Nice. So then I can call it the Queen City Improvement Bureau, as I always want to.
Go right ahead.
Nice.
It fits my mood.
It's a goth time.
Yeah.
All right.
How you been?
I've been okay. I've been in the corner over there.
I noticed.
Yep, writing my magnum opus.
Oh, what's this one?
You
Every year another magnum opus from this guy.
I know. I can't stop producing fat masterpieces.
Yeah.
Like, for example, last year I wrote Gravity's Rainbow.
I know.
From memory.
That was an impressive feat.
Yes, it was very impressive considering I had not read Gravity's Rainbow.
Yeah.
So I
900 pages on bananas. That wasn't exactly what the book was about.
No, but I mean, I remember the first few pages, actually, which I did read, were about bananas and bombs and stuff. So I just wrote about that. Yep.
That's pretty much the book.
Yeah, I just figured there were a bunch of monkeys, maybe, with bananas throwing bombs at each other. I don't know. But I got a really good publishing deal out of it.
Yeah.
And so far...
I know. I blurbed it.
Only lightly sued by Thomas Pynchon so far.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. The statement of claim, though. God, it was long.
I know. Just a little message.
Tome.
Just a little tome, to say.
Cease and desist went 900 pages.
This year, my fat masterpiece is Dr. Seuss that I'm doing from memory.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All of Dr. Seuss?
All of it.
Yeah?
Every single last word he ever wrote.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a taste?
February 17th. Oatmeal again. Can't stand my life.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's not from one of his children's books. That's just his diaries.
Right.
Yeah, I'm riffing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I got.
Attendance?
Sure.
Okay.
What are you? Some kind of Paul Duchesne? Is that you?
Whoa! I am.
10 years, I got it right.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And me, I'm some kind of Paul Duchesne Jr.?
No.
No.
Nice try.
Am I? So you're not my dad?
No. Nope.
I'm so disappointed.
More like your drunk uncle.
That's fine. I'll be your stone cold sober nephew.
Okay.
Right.
Named Aiden Morgan.
I'll take it.
All right.
It sounds pretty familiar, so
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Cool. Hey, we got guests.
You say this, and I'm tired of. You get my hopes up, and then there's nobody here.
I know. But guess what? This is the second time in a row where
What?
it's true.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is it Mark Burton again?
No. Sadly.
Is it someone who
Hi,
agree?
Mark.
Is it someone or maybe a group of people who just agree with Mark Burton?
It is. It's the Mark Burton fan club. Jon
So we can hear
Kelly
the
from
same
the
opinions
Mark Burton
again?
fan club.
Oh, no.
No, we have Jon and Kelly Lawrence from the Queen City Urbanist Bookclub.
Hi.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
I'm in awe of your basement dwelling.
Oh, thank you. That's not usually the description we get. It's usually, what's that smell?
No, I love the moss in here.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's very green.
It's bioluminescent.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sustainable.
Exactly. When we turn the lights off. It keeps us up all night.
Yeah, we don't get much sleep.
No.
That explains a lot.
And it hums.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you listen long enough, it seems to be saying our names. We're not sure. So,
Have you been licking the moss again?
yes.
Oh.
So, I mean, the sandwiches in the vending machine get pretty stale.
Yeah, and sometimes we feed them to the moss.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
do what you got to do.
exactly.
It's just because we want to hear the moss go. Nom, 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 nom.
So, the Queen City Urbanist Bookclub,
Yes.
what is it?
We're a book club.
Yeah,
We like to read about urbanism. We're a little bit of some nerds that like to educate ourselves about cities and how they work. So during the pandemic, I think everyone needed a hobby, and that was ours, was starting to get into urbanism.
Yeah, and it was something that we can enjoy together, right? Like, we'd throw on YouTube on the TV, watch all the latest and greatest coming out of urbanist YouTube, and
You couldn't make sourdough like everybody else.
I cooked sourdough before the pandemic. I needed something new.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
So I got into urban activism, I guess.
right.
yeah, kind of like a long route all the way through YouTube, through the specific ideas around going from just learning about things to getting more involved in your community, and then from there, like, I guess, trying to bring like-minded people together in order to, I guess, learn in a cooperative kind of setting.
Yeah.
Nice. What was your gateway drug into reading about it? So what was the YouTube
Well-
that really hit for you?
We went to Japan in March of 2020, which sounds crazy, but was a lot of fun. And then the world shut down while we were in Japan, which was a little terrifying. So we came back from Japan, and, we couldn't walk around places. We'd just been in kind of like the urbanist utopia, as most people think of it. And so we started watching videos of people walking around cities, which...
Neat.
Yes, Edward Willett, an author in Regina, he does a walking series. Yeah, so we watched his videos every day, and we started walking around New York, and then you get videos about walking around, and then you get videos about how to facilitate better walking around and transportation, and we were radicalized by YouTube.
Yeah,
That's
and
exciting.
at that point, we were living in Chicago, so there was a bit of a different kind of feel for, I guess, the fabric of, I guess, Chicago and like how it's made up in its different neighborhoods. So watching Edward Willett kind of walk around Regina, we got kind of that feel for Regina, because Kelly had spent some time here, but she's not a Regina native, so to speak.
I'm American. I'm very sorry.
We're not Reginans either, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm the only.
That's right.
The only Reginian here.
Therefore, you have this show now. We must leave.
That's some real street cred. So we started collecting books about urbanism, and I had no excuse to read them, and I need social pressure to do so. So this is the ultimate social pressure.
Yeah, now you lead a book club, so if the lead doesn't read the book, it's kind of
a problem.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. So it's forced me to read 6 books so far.
Brilliant.
Yes. We're learning.
Yeah.
What I want to know what the books are.
Well, we started with Strong Towns, which I think is kind of like the bedrock of modern urbanism. So Charles Marone is really active in talking about like the financial viability of cities and how they can exist in the future. Reading it finally after watching so many videos about it, I didn't realize how doomerist it was. He very much thinks that like cities are just not going to survive.
Yeah, I think one of his like primary points is like, hey, you got to make investments on where you're going to get return, and if there's certain parts of your city that aren't worth investing in, then you should probably let them kind of wither while you focus your money where you're going to actually get return on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
I was just picturing, he was talking about, investing heavily in areas that are profitable. So if you think of the profitability of Regina, a lot of that is in North Central, Transition, Cathedral, Lakeview, all these walkable areas to downtown. Like, imagine us, like, having amazing sidewalks and the rest of the city kind of withering away. That's very radical and kind of a little scary, I think.
I don't know if it's entirely like realistic either, but
right.
So
how does he define profitability in that context? Like, because I know that there's going to be people who live in, say, Wisconsin who will hear that and be greatly outraged. Like, we pay property taxes.
Right.
We are much profit, very profit.
We are dentists. We are car ownership.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's neighborhoods that pay for themselves, more or less. So a lot of the infrastructure that has to go into building areas, streets, pipes, gas lines, electricity, building a new pump to get water pressure to the end of the city, all of that stuff takes money. And so the less dense an area is, the less property tax you're collecting from it, the less viable it is as a place that can pay for itself. So he really argues that particularly suburban U.S., but much of any development that's been done in the last 50 years really has not been built with that kind of profitability thought in mind.
Yeah.
And I think also a big chunk of his kind of thoughts on that too, right, has to do with how neighborhoods age, right? So part of the reason that those new neighborhoods are, so expensive, right, as far as their property taxes, because their homes are new, right? So their assessed values are really high. But as things start to settle, as those homes start to age, those assessed values probably will start crawling downward, right? Because that's just kind of the natural progression of things. Is things get older, they get cheaper, and there'll eventually be some other new neighborhood. Maybe Coopertown is built by then, and that'll be the new neighborhood with the high taxes.
Right. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think if your economy is dependent on a small group of developers, then you kind of have to just keep on building new neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And while other neighborhoods sort of stumble.
Right.
Kind of.
Yep.
So where did you guys go from there?
We
more
went
upbeat?
Oh, so much more upbeat. Jane Jacobs, she was writing in the 60s when urban blight was a huge problem, so she is coming at urbanism from a different place. But she's actually very much like Charles Marohn. She does not feel that cities are doing well. And she targeted all of the issues that Charles did, 67 years before he wrote any books. There's a reason why she's the mother of urbanism.
Yeah.
And her book's amazing. Every single sentence is like a trumpet blast from heaven. She knows what she's talking about, for sure.
Yeah. Although it is very technical, so trying to read it can be a little bit rough, right? It's a lot to get through.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about her all day.
Yeah, we were talking about this before, but that she was also self-taught. And
Yeah.
so she writes this really technical tome, but it was all, she didn't go to urban planning school.
She did not. It did not exist. She was very masculine developers telling her what to do just because they had an education. She lived in a city. She knew the city. She was able to describe it in a way that resonates today in completely different circumstances, which is crazy.
Yeah. Now, urban blight for Jane Jacobs, the city center in the 60s was a very different beast to now. What was she seeing?
But she was looking at neighborhoods that had been redlined and really, had a huge person of color population, immigrant population, and the city was saying, well, these are kind of dingy, chaotic slums. And she's saying, chaos is a form of order. What you're seeing in the macro works in the micro and actually is really healthy for a city. And these areas will, develop themselves over time because they have that resiliency, whereas building new areas, suburban areas, they're empty of character, and so nobody wants to live in them. They're just kind of dead from birth.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can I assume that we're talking about The Death and Life of Great American Cities?
Oh, yes.
The urtext of... Yes.
She got very dark as she kept writing. We haven't read any of her other books, but I think her last one is pretty bleak. Do you remember the title of that one?
Is that Dark Age Ahead?
Yes,
yeah,
that's
that sounds
it.
right.
Oh my goodness. A little scared of that one.
A short and pithy book, but it's pretty much encapsulated by the title. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Did she capture the time that we're in now?
Handily.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. Although I don't think she would have imagined what we're looking at right now.
The specifics, just the general vibes.
Just general vibes, yeah.
Canada is in an interesting place because we have a housing crisis. So both Charles and Jane Jacobs say that you can't build your way into a nice city. It has to happen organically. But as we know, Canada doesn't have enough housing. We haven't had enough housing for quite some time. So it's going to be interesting kind of trying to reconcile those ideas with the reality that Canada is facing.
Yeah, I think that was right. I think that was part of our discussions too in those two books, right? Is like both of those authors kind of, they advocate for gentle density, right? To like try and make, still allow cities to change, but kind of allow it to happen, at a certain pace, right? And, when we're in a housing crisis, how does that change, right? So Regina is a little bit insulated from that, not completely, right? Like we obviously have upward pressure, like on our, rents and on our, housing prices, but we don't face a lot of the same issues of like the larger urban centers in Canada. So I think that was kind of, an interesting contrast.
That's why the book club's helpful, because the discussions are trying to put all of this in context to where we live, as opposed to these big ideas that just kind of exist for American cities that they're writing about.
Yeah, because a lot of times, they're written in the context of like a New York, right, or like a Chicago, or like a Toronto when they're like looking at Canada, or even Vancouver, right? Like Vancouver is, always looked at, as the kind of pinnacle of Canadian urbanism, right? But these discussions that we have as part of our book club, we can kind of center it more to, where we live and the conditions that we live under.
Right.
So we're on 91.3 FM, CJTR, Regina Community Radio. We're the Queen City Improvement Bureau, and we're talking to Jon and Kelly from the Queen City Urbanist Bookclub. Have you guys read anything recently that sort of speaks to that tension, that like how do we deal with the reality of now, on the one hand, we've got to get past the old development patterns, but also do it very quickly because we don't have enough houses?
Yeah. So actually last month was a weird book. It was Decoding Density. It was a competition run by the Vancouver Urbanarium Group. So they, Vancouver, obviously huge problems with housing, way worse than, Regina. They have to come up with some really creative solutions to how do we build that missing middle. So the contest specifically was trying to imagine, what does the middle housing look like? What can we design, if we got rid of all of the rules and just said, we need housing, how do we build it? What an interesting book. Such great ideas. Everything from, co-housing, or getting rid of parking, central timber building. The one that really struck me was an Indigenous group submitted kind of a roundhouse proposal, where they said that the traditional ways that we think of land ownership, particularly in Canada, are really outdated, that a capitalist system is never going to get us to the place where housing is available for everyone. It's not a commodity, it's a right. That was so fascinating. They had some super, super creative solutions for that.
Neat. Was there one specific idea, beyond that if you could build it, if you had money and could build tomorrow, what would you build?
I don't know about you, but I think we all agreed the winner of the competition, I would pay real dollars to live there tomorrow. Okay. It was a couple towers in a park, basically, and a lot of the entries for this competition really focused on connecting the neighborhood together with the apartment building. So the central walkway had a little river. It connected it to the rest of the neighborhood. It was a place to hang out. It had co-working space downstairs. It had limited parking and a cafe and a babysitting zone, and it just looks so beautiful, and it's everything my little heart would have wanted.
Yeah, and I think that was what was in a good chunk of those proposals too, was looking more into bringing mixed use kind of back into, our modern neighborhoods, right? Euclidean zoning, where they separate out residential from commercial, it's obviously not really working all that well, as we have all of our traffic issues and housing issues that when people picture an idyllic life, right, when you remove all the boundaries, that, we start to see more of that community building and more of the, having stuff be conveniently located and close to where you live, right? So.
Yeah, but it was Jane Jacobs' idea of chaos, right? The chaos in the micro is order. it's bringing that chaos back into the neighborhood, like allowing people to like rent a space to show off art, or like have a class, or having a space where mothers can go and drop off their kids for the day, and a park that's like integrated into your building. I love that.
Corner shops.
Yes. Oh, I miss corner shops. I mean, that's one of the reasons we moved to Cathedral, is because 13th is possibly the greatest place in the city, not to brag. But having a corner shop, like, don't underestimate it.
Some of my best memories as a kid is like going out, hopping on the bike, going to Klein's, getting Slurpees, shoot some hoops, go to like the spray park. Because like even neighborhoods that like people don't typically consider when they consider like walkability. I grew up in kind of like the Al Ritchie kind of area, and Queen Elizabeth Park kind of provided like a good chunk of those different like amenities. And of course, it's not as extensive as 13th Avenue, right? Like we would go out to like Park Street has like some like restaurants and stuff there, and then there used to be like a restaurant out on College Avenue that we could go to too. But I think it's seeing like a kind of a return to that, or at least a continuation of that pattern that would make Regina.
What was the restaurant on College?
Oh, I'm trying to remember what it's called now. It's been closed for like 25 years. So.
Didn't your mom work there?
Yeah, my mom did work there. That's why I'm trying to remember the name.
Look at that.
Ovenside, I think.
Okay.
What kind of food?
Just like typical diner food.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like... again, it's hard to think back that long.
I'm super jealous, though, because I grew up in Naperville, Illinois, which is like the stereotypical suburb. There was a Walgreens within 30 minutes of me, and that's it. So my childhood had no restaurants that I walked to.
Yeah. See, that was my childhood. I grew up in, when I was a little kid, I was in the suburbs of Kitchener. And then after that, we moved to the suburbs of Edmonton. Ooh. And so it was always like, it was an undertaking to go to things. But, and yet, like I think about my childhood and how, you learned all the cut-throughs to get through the suburbs, right? Like there were always cut-throughs. And then you'd find like the secret Max milk that you and your friends and you could go there. To get like some corn chips and a Slurpee. And it's weird in that you look at neighborhoods now and we're actually doing them worse.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've gotten rid of all the cut-throughs because those little easements between houses, they take away from like, saleable land.
Right.
So kids have to bike like kilometers just to get out of their cul-de-sac. And then even those little like secret Max Milks don't exist anymore. Yes. Those strip malls, they're all gone. Everybody has to go out to the box store or nothing.
Yeah, and I've looked around at some of the maps for some of the newer neighborhoods, and they do have some of those cut-throughs. Yeah. It's just they don't really go anywhere. Yeah. They have like really nice like manicured parks, and have the opportunity to go in and I guess kind of drive by them every once in a while. Yeah. But like, if you want to go get a Slurpee as like a kid living out in the greens, it's like, what do you do? Yeah. You got to ask mom and dad to, get the car started.
Yeah. Well, if you go to some of the neighborhoods in North Harbor Landing, and you're like, you can see the Walmart from your suburban home, but there's a wall around your neighborhood, and you will have to walk, bike, or drive, usually drive, like 2-3 kilometers to get to the Walmart that you can like see from your backyard.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy. That's what we like. We like that.
It's like being in a video game where you can see your goal, but you have to like zigzag through the ruined city, deal with the zombies, etc.
So it's to make life more interesting, not more irritating.
Exactly. Yeah. That's you've nailed it. That's good. That's good video game urban design. That's what that is.
Weirdly, like Regina has a lot of small businesses that live in people's houses, and I just wish we could get them out. Right? Yeah. I'd love to visit some of these places or like talk to some of these people and share them with people, but I can't because they're in someone's kitchen.
Yeah. Which I mean, like, is a good use of like a good use of like of their house, right? To be able to have their own small business. It just like it's very hard as far as visibility is concerned to know that these places are even there, right? They're kind of completely hidden unless you're in the know.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the resiliency of Regina that, like, so many of them are active and survive by social media instead of actual foot traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So we've got a couple minutes before we have to go to the innovative revenue tools. But what would you guys say is your favorite book so far?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'm a little biased. Our last meeting was over Urbanist YouTube, and I think if you're going to start anywhere, start on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I'm biased because we started there, but it's a great way to get introduced to a topic in 10 minutes without having to kind of slog through 8 hours of everything that Jay Jacobs might be talking about.
I think as far as like books are concerned, I mean, it sounds cliche, but I think you got to start with Strong Towns as kind of like that introduction to, I guess, modern like urbanist thought. Or
I don't know. I think Jane Jacobs is like talking about everything that Charles is talking about, just from a different place.
Yeah.
So I'm going to argue for Jane. We should start with Jane.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how much investment you want to make after you've gone through the YouTube playlist.
That's fair. Start with YouTube. It's much easier.
Yeah. So for me, it all, like, the YouTube starts and ends with
Not just bikes.
Yep. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Great channel.
there's a reason they call everyone in urbanist circles orange-pilled.
Right.
Because
really?
we were all converted by not just bikes. It's
Yeah.
true.
I have no idea.
Yeah. I also like Adam something. He's a little bit more acerbic, and he ranges further, but...
It's strange. There's a ton of Canadian urbanist YouTubes. A lot of them. So my favorite's Oh the Urbanity. They're located out of Montreal.
Yeah.
And Paige Saunders, also out of Montreal. He's originally from New Zealand, but he makes some super interesting videos about the city and what he sees in it. And he's very funny. So
Nice.
it's like all the CanCon is on YouTube. I appreciate that.
That's great. Okay, well, on that note, we should go to Innovative Revenue Tools.
Yeah.
And but you guys will be here for 3 seconds. All right, we're back from Innovative Revenue Tools. This is the Queen City Improvement Bureau. Aiden Paul.
Those were not very many innovative revenue tools.
No. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
Maybe we're being rationed.
Maybe the time of austerity has come
Oh, no.
at last.
We need more tools.
We need more tools. I've got one.
Oh, let's hear it.
Well, you know how everybody's spending all this money on housing.
Mm-hmm.
But people still need housing. So I'd say we take inspiration from nature's original hobo,
Okay.
the snail,
Oh.
and we just actually buy gigantic shells full of everything we need.
Put them on everybody's back.
Put them on everybody's backs.
I like this idea.
And they'd be very heavy, so we'd move real slow
Yeah.
and just sort of creep around.
Well, that's not so bad, right?
Yeah,
Like, people need to slow down, take a load off. I guess put a load on.
Yeah.
But then you
Load
could, like,
on, and you can take
squirrel up in.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
like,
When you're a little tired, you just nap, whatever, on the sidewalk.
Be okay with that.
And I haven't quite figured out a revenue stream, except that with people moving so slowly, it would be pretty easy to take their money.
Oh, smart. Yeah.
So, there we go.
Yeah.
City's revenue problem solved.
And you can sell ads. On the side of the
on the
shells.
sides of the shells. Like wraparounds,
Yes.
like on buses. Brilliant.
Oh, dear.
Love this.
So, book club, you.
Yes.
This we did not do a shout out for author of one of the most important urban planning tones, Donald Shoup, and the high cost of
yes.
free parking.
Oh, yeah.
He died last week.
Did he?
He did.
I did not know this.
Yeah, and as far as I know, like I had seen him on YouTube fairly recently, quite spry. So sad and shocked to see that he passed. But that book is like, it might be the only urban planning tome that was like repeatedly name dropped in city council by Andrew Stevens. He loved him some Shoup.
Well, R.I.P. Donald Shoup. You would have loved Mark Burton.
Oh, no, he would
Or not.
Yeah, because the high cost of free parking, gigantic 1,000-page tome that outlines how free parking is a huge drag on cities and is much, the costs of it are far underestimated, and it's a blight on cities, in fact. So, and we've doubled and tripled down on it, and all y'all we're all like from the Mark Burton Club.
Yes.
We had Mark Burton down here in the subbasement. And you guys had Mark Burton visit the book club. How'd that go?
I mean, he was very nice for attending.
He is very nice.
I sent him an email directly after his comments about suburban slums.
Urban
squalor.
Urban squalor. I'm sorry, I keep getting that wrong. It triggered me a little bit. So I just emailed him to say I was, disappointed in those comments, that I really feel like there are priorities other than parking in a city, and that there's a balance to be had there for sure. Yeah. And he responded. It was a little bit of a surprise response. I think he thought that I was, some scary activist lady coming to get him, but it's nice.
Black bloc urbanist.
I mean, I can be scary, but I'm not that scary. But we invited him to book club to talk, and so he came and kind of gave his perspective on. Last meeting was on Urbanist YouTube, so the first video that we watched was a video from About Here, which is a Vancouver creator. And he was talking about how cities vote for density and then kind of undermine it with regulation and, blocking any actual density at all costs. So he basically gave the same perspective that he gave on your show to us, that, there needs to be a balance, and that, people are always going to need to drive, which we agree with. To a certain extent.
Yeah, to a certain extent. You can't, completely eliminate driving, right? But at least I think during our book club discussion, we got to give, that little bit of pushback and give that, a perspective that maybe he hasn't really seen too much of, right? And, especially with the group of us being there,
right.
He can see that it's not just, some fringe thought, that there are members of not only the cathedral community, but also, members from Harbor Landing and from Regent Park and, other neighborhoods in the city that, all also think this way. So
there's an idea in the last video that was on our playlist. It was by Philosophy Tube. She talked about the idea of urbanism and philosophy. So she posited that she was talking about urbanist conspiracy theories, which we're actually going to be covering as part of the 15-minute cities later this year.
Nice.
But she had a really interesting idea she took from Judith Butler's Who's Afraid of Gender, the idea of what's the word for it? Phantasms, that's it. Where people are kind of shaped by the experience that they've had in their lives, and they build this shield around them where they can't really imagine a different life. And when they receive facts that are contrary to the way that they imagine life worth living, they just can't absorb them. So I feel in a degree, he's kind of caught in that phantasm that he can't imagine a Regina where you wouldn't drive everywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's not an uncommon experience for a lot of folks in Regina too, right? It's kind of okay, you might take the bus when you're a kid, right? And you don't have any money, but as soon as you become an adult, right, you get you get your car, and the end goal is to get your your nice yard with your nice single family home, and with a yard to raise your kids, right? And people picture that as kind of the indicator that you've made it, right? But because Regina is so isolated, they might not have the experience of living somewhere else where, you lived in Chicago where, it might be the I guess the end goal of living in a nice luxury apartment as a 20-year-old, right, where you get to be out on the street or out on the streets, going out to bars and having fun, and then eventually settling back down and even living in still living in an apartment, but maybe something that has 3 bedrooms or whatever, which isn't really available in Regina.
So the only way you can fight phantasms is by presenting a different vision of like the world to these phantasms that you can't change them. You can only, destroy them by making a different view. So I think that was what we were trying to give him, is like, here's a different vision of what Regina could be like.
Right. I found it interesting, and our experience with Mark Burton, I don't think is different than a lot of experiences with people who have those phantasms, a great word. They don't know that what they're presenting as normal is a set of assumptions,
right,
and is a set of choices that have been made to build a city in a certain way. Councillor Hawkins was really bad for this, where he would brand things like the U-Pass as social engineering, that you're forcing people through psychology and economics to get out of their cars, not recognizing that the investments that he was approving, without even thinking for like road expansions and suburban sprawl, were also social engineering, that he was doing exactly the same thing, because he can't see that the things that are just normal assumptions to himself are anything different than just, the world playing out the way it ought.
Right. We read a book called Happy Cities, which is like the antithesis, I think, to Jane Jacobs and Strong Towns. And it's all about how like cities are meant to give you joy. Like that's what their point should be.
Yeah.
And that like we should spend money on things that give you joy. And
and that should be like a kind of a central part of like your strategic vision as a city for moving forward, is like, okay, how do we make investments on things that, make people happy and make people like happy to live in the city in which they live.
Right.
And in some cases, I just don't think parking is bringing extra happiness. I think we've like tapped out on the happy quotient for parking. There's enough of it. We could maybe try something else.
Yeah, and I think like that's part of a culture that we want to kind of bring to Regina, right? Like Regina's, stereotypically through, various social media platforms kind of, think of Regina as like some like dingy, kind of hole where like people are forced to live and like, if you can escape it, then like great. But like, yeah, we would,
I mean, I'm an immigrant to here that chose Regina on purpose. A lot of people question that, but I don't. I love Regina. Like, I think it's beautiful, and I want to see it continue to thrive. And I think that, like, some of the coalition that's forming on city council disturbs me, because I don't feel like they have that vision.
It's purely a vision of, like, okay, how do we reduce taxes, but not necessarily take action towards things that would, reduce taxes that people might not like. Right
so
away.
Making the nasty, like I'm gonna cut the nice things thing. Like, when your dad was like, okay, we're running into a budget crunch, no more dessert.
Right. Like, you can't have like cool pathways or bathrooms or art installations or more transit. We can only have roads. And I'm like, well, I mean, like, Happy Cities actually says that people are happy to pay taxes if they feel like they're getting something out of it. And I think that Regina, like, taxes are absolutely an issue. I get it. It's a housing crisis and people have trouble paying increased property tax.
Yeah, especially when they see their services going down too, right? Like there was the whole thing last year, right, where they, they kept their tax increases down, but now garbage collection is going on to, your utility bill, and it's only being collected once every other week, right? Like, people see their taxes go up and their service levels go down. Yeah, there's going to be a bit of anger there.
That does not spark joy in me. It's like Marie Kondoing your city. Like, what is the smallest thing that you can change today to make things better for people, to make them happier?
Right.
And I just don't think that they have that in mind when they're like voting down like density and some of the things they've been up to recently.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that people on the city council and administration sometimes will say it all comes down to dollars, but I say no, it comes down to a vision. And if you say it all comes down to dollars, and that is a vision, but it's a terrible vision.
I think it can still all come down to dollars too, right? It's just like, how do we invest those dollars towards, a vision of Regina that people want to live in, right? And how do we, kind of take those steps to get there?
Right. Like, I'm interested in Mayor Chad's Regina 25 initiative and that whole commercial that was just released.
I haven't seen this.
Oh, you should. It's on Instagram. And he gave a really interesting vision of Regina as a place you want to live. I'm not sure that I find it fully effective, but I can see that he has vision. There are other people on council that I don't see their vision yet. I really wish I could.
Can we name names? What's the scary coalition you see forming?
I mean, it's like that male coalition. It's kind of disturbing
to me. It's the dudes, right?
It is the dudes. Mm. It's like Sickless, Bezos, Burton, Rasevich.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
They're a little bit bullying on council, and it worries me.
Yeah.
Let's just writing down some numbers.
Yeah.
It's just writing down the numbers.
Well,
Not
he's
intimidating.
got his P's, right? He's got his 3 P's, and that's all we should be doing with our budget.
Right.
The parks, the
police, pipes and police.
Peeps and pipes and peeps.
Mm. Yeah.
Polipes and peeps.
Pipes, peace, parks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling John earlier that, they don't seem to be on the same page as everyone. It's not like we're arguing for, the way that bike lanes are put in. We're arguing for bike lanes at all. We haven't even reached page 1 of the Urbanist book. We are arguing about whether we should read it. And that really bothers me because, these ideas are not new. Jane was writing in the 60s. It's been a while. I feel like we should be beyond this.
Yeah. And the notion that we should delay things like bike lanes, which I think is going to be on the chop this year, or bus purchases.
Right.
I think that will also be on the chop this year. These people are coming into council having zero history with council and no knowledge of what's gone before. And these things have been cut every single budget going back forever. It's always buses and bike lanes. The B's, the 2 big B's, they get cut first thing, right? They often bike lanes don't even make it into the budget, even though we've had a cycling plan for I can't even remember how long, with a bike lane network that is supposed to have been built out however many kilometers by now, and we've gotten about a half block downtown
and some sharrows.
Yeah.
It's interesting to look at other cities. When Burton was talking to us, he was saying that Regina is different. We have different problems. We can't have these things because we're.
Sorry, was that me?
Triggered you.
Sorry.
We're just a different winter city. We can't have all these nice things. But you look at places like Montreal, who are having these snowstorms that are burying the city. They have way more snow than we do, but they're able to deal with it because they have the density to remove that snow, and they invest in things like bike lanes. So places like Edmonton or Winnipeg or Montreal, Calgary, Victoria, they're all doing super interesting things, investing in Victoria has permanent bike valet downtown, and I'm I can't imagine a scenario in which Regina would spring for that. But what a luxury. It makes you happy because you have someone to watch your bike.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed that they can't imagine us being anywhere else. Regina does have unique problems, but they're not that unique.
Yeah, we're still a city like any other city. And if you want to be aspirational, right, you should be looking at, not necessarily matching, Toronto. There's no world in which Regina is ever going to be a Toronto or even an Edmonton. Maybe some point in the distant future, but we should aspire to have nice things and then make a plan to get there.
Yeah.
So we're on 91.3 FM CJTR, Regina Community Radio. We're the Queen City Improvement Bureau. We're talking to Jon and Kelly from the Queen City Urbanist Bookclub. One of the things that Mark Burton ended his visit here on that made my head explode, but we were out of time, was the why won't you go? You said you'd go for a bike ride with me, but why won't you go now in the winter? And it's
people do that though.
They do. People here do bike, but because you made a bunch of decisions to make cycling in the winter here hostile, or taking transit here at the best of times hostile. And so those aren't transportation options most of the year because they're just so difficult because they've been so underfunded by city council. And the decisions that do get made are frequently, not the best. So.
I was trying to take the bus to the Globe Theater on last week to see Women of the Fur Trade, and it was like -50, and I was like, I could take the bus, no sweat, but I missed it by a minute, and I could see it passing by, and I looked down at the schedule, and another one wasn't for another half hour, and I was like, if there was 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I maybe would have waited, but there was no way I could stay for a half hour, like, at that weather. So, like, if we had invested in transit, I would have used it, and there wouldn't be yet another car parking in downtown, but as it was, I had to, hold my nose.
Parking downtown after 5 isn't like such a chore, but that's a whole other set of issues that we'd spend a whole other episode talking about.
So sometimes I feel when people like when the Mark Burtons of this world, and I like to preface this, I like Mark quite a bit, say things like, well, why don't you bike now? It's like someone set your house on fire and then says, not so comfortable in your house now, is it? Huh? Why aren't you sitting in your living room, huh?
Yeah, and it's not even just that, right? It's also like, there are 52 weeks in the year, and, maybe like 42, 43 of them aren't like completely hostile to cycling, and, right? Like we can, just because we can't cycle for like, 4 weeks of the year, let's say like all of February, right? Because it's like so cold in, Saskatchewan, right? That, we can still do these things other times of the year.
There's a lady on TikTok, and she lives in Svalbard, which is in like the most hostile environment I think you could get, like even worse than
like
Regina.
Arctic Circle.
Oh yeah, I mean they don't have sun for most of the year.
It's even worse than Balcony.
They have we read a book, Two Wheels Good, which was specifically about cycling, and in their essay on winter biking, they talked about the bike culture in Svalbard. It's way more intense than Regina even. It's just easier to bike places because their city is built for it, and if the streets were clear, we could do it too. There's nothing stopping us. There's someone from Saskatoon who actually talks to the author of that book too, so like somebody's biking in Saskatoon in the winter.
I think you've raised a really good point, which is that instead of taking a city like Regina, one of its unique things is that it gets brutally cold for a few weeks every year.
Right.
Instead of designing a city or evolving the city so that it would actually accommodate that kind of thing, we double down on roads and parking and then shrug our shoulders. That's what I find so maddening about this whole thing.
Yeah, it's like the parking lots that are designed like in a lot of like U.S. big box stores where they design the parking capacity for like Black Friday, right? They need enough people to park on Black Friday, right? Whereas like the rest of the year, they're very, very empty. So
it's true.
Some of the parking lots here are like that, like a lot of grasslands. You will not see it full ever.
I learned how to drive in an empty parking lot, so
you have good feelings for them.
I have a little bit of nostalgia for empty parking lots on weekends, but they're not useful or productive. Like, Regina has so many of them; it's hilarious.
And yet we're expected to. So the compact urban squalor argument is the one that he made at council, where he was saying that urban squalor was the lack of parking on street in the suburbs that was leading to fights amongst neighbors because they couldn't park in front of their house. This is what he was referring to.
I think we should encourage that and charge money. People come
meter all the parking in Harbor Landing.
Well, there's a bunch of kind of solutions to that we've even seen living in Chicago. Like one of the ways that they've addressed similar issues is by issuing permits, right? You get one permit per household for, street parking, and, additional permits cost extra money, and those goes towards improvements.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm surprised that if, the parking problem isn't so bad that we need to address it in some way. There are other ways of addressing it than just not building density.
Yeah.
And creative solutions sometimes work better.
Well, and this is the one where I actually start to get a little bit hostile, because if you move into a suburb, like all houses in most of these suburbs were built with at least 1 and usually 2 to 4 parking spots.
Yeah.
Per house, right? So you would have like a 1 or 2 car garage minimum, and then a driveway with space for 1 or 2 cars. So these are places that have 2 to 4 parking spots on their property. Still, they cannot figure out how to make it work if they don't also have 1 to 2 free parking spots on the street in front of their house. And I'm like, if you move into this house and you have so many automobiles that the allotment that you had with the house when you bought it, it's kind of on you. Right? Like, this is no longer, like, why do I have to pay property taxes in the suburbs for free parking in front of houses that they will then begrudge me were I to come into the suburbs to use, right? So I don't have a lot of sympathy for Mark Burton's argument that the density is out of control because people have nowhere to park.
I think some of that too is the expectation that parking will be available, right? Like, there are some people that fill their garages with like a woodworking workshop, right, where they have space to store their car, but they choose not to because they they count on that space in front of their house being something that the government provides, and that will always be available to them.
And
so, sorry.
Oh, no. I was going to say, Andrew Stevens told us that, like, his first complaint was about parking, and his last complaint would be about parking, like, no matter what he did. If he, raised Cathedral and built a parking lot on top of it, people would still complain it wasn't close enough to them. So I think at some point you just kind of have to filter that through, like, okay, I understand, I got it, and we're going to move on.
Yeah.
So what did Mark think of the meeting?
I think he was impressed with our ability to have civil discussion. He was particularly talking about how sometimes in the U.S. you get yelled at for having certain opinions. I am American, so I take offense to that.
Should have yelled at him.
No, he fundamentally, I think, disagreed. But I think the one thing that threw him is he asked how many of us had driven there that night, and it was another one of those negative 40 days, and only 2 of us drove out of the group.
Really?
Oh yeah, and not all of us are local. Some of us take the bus, and it's hard to get a bus at 9 o'clock at night. So I hope that showed him something.
Yeah. Do you think he was at all convinced by you guys?
No.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I think he found it maybe worth it to have the discussion, but I'm not sure if he found it entirely persuasive.
I still think it's that phantasm. Like, he can't envision a Regina where you wouldn't have to drive your child to school and then soccer and then dinner and get groceries. It's like there's no reality in which you would walk to those places or take a bus to those places or send your child off on a bus or a bike.
Yeah. So we're talking about a single counselor, but I think that this is these are attitudes and opinions that extend far beyond him. And I do then wonder, like, what is the point of all this discourse? Because I feel like I get people who will sort of approach my ideas very sort of aggressively and say, "Oh, you don't have an open mind. Come, experience the true Regina culture, the true Regina life, and you'll understand." And so, some of them, named Mark Burton, want to take me out in a car and drive me around. And I'm like, I know that this is not going to convince me, because anything that I'm shown, I've already lived and experienced, right? Like, I know all these arguments because I was in them. And yet, on the other side, I don't think there's any actual, real interest in understanding what I think or what you think. I think it's very much about trying to quell the dissent.
I agree. Yeah. It's, I mean, I know he reacted towards us, being a hostile group that was, trying to, catch him. Yeah. But really, I think a book club is the most open group that could have contacted him about this. We are actively trying to learn and open ourselves to new ideas. So we're not closed off. I feel like he needs to challenge, or the whole group really needs to challenge themselves a little, and read about this. I strongly recommend Strong Towns. Like, that was our parting words, both John and I. Like, read Strong Towns. I think he would really like it. Yeah,
especially because it doesn't come from like a very, I don't know, people tend to think of urbanism as some like leftist, extremist like viewpoint, right? But the kind of appeal for Strong Towns is that it comes from more of a fiscally, right-wing kind of perspective on, proper fiscal responsibility and like what investments do we make in our city in order to, make sure that it's fiscally sound long-term, right? And focus on the resilience of your city over these kind of long-term bets.
Nice. So we got about a minute. If people are excited about what you guys are saying, how can they find you and join the book club?
Oh, yes. They can find us on the Cathedral Village website and register with us. We're also in the Leisure Guide. That'll bring you there. Or we have a Facebook group that we post to pretty regularly. We're going to read some really fascinating books. I'm super excited about the one in June for queering urbanism. So looking at urbanism from a queer perspective, which I've never thought of before, or urban conspiracy theories. We may be reading about parking and third places. So it's going to be exciting.
Oh, and what about next month's book?
Oh, next month's book is about homelessness.
Oh, really?
I really felt like we had to address that while it was still cold. Regina has a continuing problem we haven't addressed, so that's going to be a really exciting one to read.
Cool. All right, on that note.
What note?
We have to do that thing that happens at the end of every hour.
We've got a thing. Well, so are we moving to adjourn? Is that the thing?
That's it, and I'll second that motion.
All right, motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned. You have been listening to the Queen City Improvement Bureau at 91.3 FM CJTR. Regina Community Radio. Tune to the community. Your hosts are Paul Deshen and Aidan Morgan. We've had guests tonight, Jon Kelly from the Queen City Book Club. Urbanist Book Club. Anyway. And it was great. The conversation was really, really fun.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, absolutely. And you're welcome to come on anytime, obviously. But not when we're not here. If we're here...
I was about to ask, are we the new hosts of the show now?
You can be host of the show. we're taking off for Vince. Shining Urban Design. Blue Sky, as well as... I don't even know where we are anymore. But are we even on X or if no? Just find us on Blue Sky. We're there. Coming up next, we've got the Record Room and then music all on through the night. Keep on improving, John.